Hello and welcome to On a Mission, the show where we share inspiring conversations with phenomenal women who are creating success and prosperity in their lives with purpose and passion. I'm Pauline Rohdich, a success mindset coach and clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm on a personal mission to remind you that you are a beautiful soul and you have so much potential. And my intention for this show is to give you the nudge to answer your own calling and to rise up and take on your life's mission. Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of On a Mission. This is the show where we're showcasing phenomenal women who are on a mission, who are really answering their divine assignment or their calling. And today I am really delighted to introduce you to Joanne Sweeney, who I have to just refer to my note here to introduce this amazing woman. Before I do, though, I want to say how I met Joanne about 3 years ago at a women's network conference. And she stood out to me because she was one of the speakers. And I have to say that she was absolutely incredible. I think one of the best speakers on the day. So that was when I first met Joanne. So she's incredible, an amazing lady. So she's lots of strings to her bow, but she is the founder of Public Sector Marketing Institute and also Digital Training Institute. This lady is very busy. She's the mother of 2 children. She's a 2-time author. She's won awards. She's doing all sorts of things. She's running a summit in September. And she's just an all-round amazing lady. We have a mutual friend in common as well. You're very welcome, Joanne. Delighted that you're here. So how are you keeping?
I'm really good, and thank you so much for inviting me. I've been watching your interview, so it's a real pleasure to be part of this series.
No, Joanne, thank you so much. Well, for me, I'm on a mission just to help women, become who they're meant to be, and who they're born to be. So by showcasing women just like yourself who have the journey and been on the journey, it's inspirational. At least I hope for people that are watching and listening, because we have the YouTube show and we've also got the podcast version of this interview. So Joanne, let's start. Give a little bit of background. So yes, you have all these amazing things going on in your life, business-wise, and you have a busy private life. But where did it all start? Give us a little bit of background. How did you arrive to be this incredible lady doing what you're doing?
Well, I guess I describe myself as the accidental entrepreneur. I never aspired to be in business or to run my own business. In fact, from being a very young child, I always wanted to write. And so journalism would have been my initial calling. Mm-hmm. And getting paid to write seemed like a great way to spend my days. And so that was very much my chart. But at 16, I became pregnant, and at 17, I had my daughter, Sophie. And so it was 1995, and I guess I had to become very enterprising and dig deep and be resourceful when I had little to no resources. At that stage, as you can imagine, there was a lot of stigma around being a teenage parent. And I come from Donegal and rural Donegal. But I think that was a countrywide thing then anyway. And so I guess I was single-minded in that I knew that I wanted to have Sophie. I got a lot of advice that I didn't take. And I decided that I would have Sophie, but also decided that I would go back to school. And so in making those decisions, I knew that I would have to work hard. And as I discovered, have to try and work the system because it wasn't set up for me. When Sophie was 5 months old, her dad was killed in a road traffic accident. And so that was a huge shock to me in every way. And on that fateful February night back in 1996, we were out at a nightclub in Donegal, and he was in the car and he was giving 2 young guys a lift home who had missed their bus. And I decided that night not to get in the car and to wait until he gave them a lift home. Unfortunately, none of them came home alive. And I guess, apart from the shock and the anguish and the pain and the feeling of, being afraid and alone at now 18 with a baby, it still didn't really change my vision. And I think that's something that I just had innately, that when I set myself a goal and have a vision and I see myself in a place, I can get there. I'm very grateful for that. I don't know how I have it. And so, yeah, so that's why I describe myself as enterprising and as an accidental entrepreneur, because I felt that I had that grit being a young mum and going to college.
No, I mean, obviously, sincere sympathies. I'm aware of that situation in your life, but I think incredibly admirable how you kept going. And I'm sure you had plenty of support, though I would like to think that you did at least. But I know you're sort of saying you had this innate drive and vision and goal, and how wonderful that was for you. But just as a matter of interest, I mean, was there anybody in your life that would have been, you would have considered at that time a role model? Was there somebody around you that, helped you or inspired you?
Well, you know what? The teachers in my life were really good to me. And they were very important in my life because they always saw the Joanne that had potential, the Joanne that was good at education. And they nurtured that in me. And that was really important because I didn't have any confidence or self-belief. And when I look back at that time in my life, they are very important to me. Because I knew education was going to be the ticket to my independence and my freedom that I had wanted to achieve for myself. I know I always get asked that question, and there's not anyone that I kind of go, you inspire me to change. I don't mean to sound crass, but I just kind of always had that single mind of what I want to do and then trying to trust my gut in doing it. But I've been very aware of education. Like my earliest memories are listening to the radio, reading my school books on the first day of school, but going to the back page and seeing if I could read it. You know what I mean? That knowledge was something that I was hungry for. And I think that's what inspired me, that who would feed me knowledge and who would put me in that direction.
No, but it's incredible though that the teachers, were supportive during those difficult times for you in such a non-judgmental way and saw your potential, which I really think is amazing. It's not always the case for a lot of people, unfortunately, as you rightfully said, because of stigma, etc., which, thanks be to God, I would like to think is less and less these days, that we're much more inclusive and much more accepting of one another, regardless of our differences. But you went on to do your journalism in the end, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I did, again, with that vision to be a journalist. I studied English and politics and sociology in NUI Galway, so getting to go to university was an absolute dream. And then I had my eyes on the postgraduate journalism and PR course in NUI Galway. It had 13 places, so again, it was competitive to get in. So I decided to volunteer at the student newspaper in NUI Galway, and in fact was editor of that newspaper and rebranded it. And actually that newspaper is still rebranded as Sin today. And so often when I'm in the college and I pick up a copy, I'm like, oh, okay, I was part of that rebrand. And so, yeah, I got the course, and that led me to my first job, which was an amazing job. And that was back in my home county of Donegal as a broadcast journalist in Highland Radio. And honestly, best first job I could ever have got. It taught me the skills of communication, broadcasting, thinking on your feet, delivering, being articulate, and having your own thoughts and opinions. And those are skills that I still use today.
I know one of my favorite quotes, I use it a lot actually, and I often say it on the interviews here, from Steve Jobs, where he said, you can't join the dots looking forward, but you can join the dots looking backwards. And I often think, especially in the nature of these interviews, we're showing people, everybody's sharing their journey, and most people will say the writing was on the wall, if you like. It was always there. The evidence was always there. So, I mean, you're an educator, really, ultimately. Would you agree?
That's funny you say that. I have come full circle. Like, I had no aspirations to be a teacher, right?
Yes,
but I spend my days educating now adults, and specifically in, public sector, in the radio sector, in the private sector, and I absolutely love it. So you've just joined those dots for me right there.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that's amazing. Well, I have to say, I just love seeing people's journey. That's something that I'm very passionate about. And I just love to see how because I'm so aware of our purpose and I'm always helping people with their purpose and trying to figure out, how to really use our gifts and talents. And a lot of people tend to look miles away from where they are, but it's really at the end of our nose. I mean, the evidence is there if we just take a few moments to look back. It's there, I mean, you were a lover of education, the teachers were influential in your life, and of course you mastered the skills of communication, which have led you to be able to do what you're now doing. And I mean, you've had a world stage, am I right in saying that, Joanne? I mean, I followed you a bit on social media, so you definitely get around.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to speak on some really great stages. I've spoken at Twitter headquarters in San Francisco, Facebook in Dublin, also in Australia, in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne when I was doing my book tour at the end of 2019, Phoenix in Arizona for the first book. That was a policing conference. Conferences in the UK, the European Parliament in Brussels, and across Ireland. And I have this saying, the bigger the stage, the bigger the stakes. And I want to, I embrace those fearful stages. Like I'm terrified before I go on, but I know it's breaking through that fear that will make me better and help me improve. So yeah, I do love a stage to test myself.
Well, what about aspirations for a TEDx stage?
Well, I actually have done a TEDx talk.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. In
Yeah,
Ireland?
I did.
Where did you do it?
I did it in Omagh in Northern Ireland. That's a number of years back now. Was it 2016 or 17 perhaps? But actually, I'd love to finish that story and maybe bring it to a TED stage.
Exactly. But something, I'm sure people are wondering, obviously with the title Public Sector Marketing, Digital Training Institute, I mean, what is your message? What is driving you? Where does the mission part fit into what you do?
So I guess communications is my skill set, and I watched the waves of digital kind of lapping at my ankles back in 2005, 6, and 7, and I knew that I wanted to be at the cutting edge of my career. And so I made it my mission to understand the world of digital communication so that I could help my peers. It was really in 2016 where I wanted to kind of scale my business and go online, that I realized I needed to niche down. And just what you had said there really resonated with me. The evidence was in front of my nose. Like I was like, what will be my niche? And actually I had a coach, Sigrun Gudjonsson was my business coach at the time. And I spent a full year paralyzed, not being able to move in any way. And she had said to me, Joanne, your niche is government and public sector. Your first book was about policing and social media. Both of your masters are in policing and government. And I was like, no, I couldn't do that. I mean, who am I to take on that sphere? And after I got out of my own way and got rid of the imposter syndrome, I really embraced it. And in fact, for my business, the work that I'd done in 3 years focusing on public sector was actually helped me progress quicker than in the previous 9 years because I had focus and because I then had my mission to serve. And really with government and public sector, they operate in the public interest. And my vision is to help them change the world one digital message at a time, but in the interest of the public. And we live in a world where, politics and society and everything is being disrupted. We even see the cyber attack on our National Health Service and the impact that that's having on people's lives. And ignoring the reality of the digital revolution is doing a disservice to people. And I remember as a young mum and trying to get help and go to university was difficult. And I remember one guy in the civil service used to ring me in a phone box in Salt Hill. So before mobile phones, and he would make an appointment with me. Sophie and I, she would come with me. She was about 3 at the time, and we'd stand with the wind blowing in Salt Hill, and I'd hear the phone ring. People used to think probably I was nuts, but I'll never forget Kevin and how he listened to me. and how he understood and give me a voice, and said, yeah, you have an important message and case. I didn't qualify for third level allowance because I was underage. You should be 23 before you go to university with a child, according to the government. And I didn't tick that box, but I was saving the money ultimately. And so I think with social media now and the democratization of the internet and the smartphone, you know, people have a voice, and it's really important that people's voices get heard. Because we used to be controlled by church, state, and big business, and they had the power, and then everyone else had to row in. And whereas now, you know, we can have a voice and we can reach out to people who will be inspired by our story, or we will be inspired by other stories. And I just think the internet has really done a lot of good. Obviously, there's a lot of negative, but I talk about social media for good. And I think that government and public sector agencies have a huge responsibility to step into those vacuums and those voids and to really listen and engage with the public.
Well, I think the country at large are, you know, you're a gift to everybody, really. I mean, it would sound to me very much like what you're bringing is more conscious awareness to these very left brain, potentially, you know, old school type of institutions. And so helping them to communicate better with everybody else that's on the internet and learning from, I mean, the thing about it is we're all exposed to information 24/7, and, you know, they can't hide anymore. Nobody can hide, actually. We all have to be very transparent. And if we're not, we'll be soon called out. Would you agree?
Absolutely, for sure. It's almost like, you know, the conversations are and I think while it's scary for people, if you understand it and take away that fear, people can use it to their advantage and also in the public good.
Look, it's super. I mean, listen, I feel that we're in good hands with your good self communicating on our behalf, really, which is what you're doing. You're educating them with so much awareness and such a beautiful backstory as well. And it's amazing. But I want to ask you some of the questions I tend to ask a lot of the women on this. So taking it a little bit out of the public sector for a second, you know, when do you feel that you would have a connection with God or your soul or a higher intelligence or the universe, whatever you're happy calling it? When do you feel you're most connected?
Well, I think the first thing that I'd have to say, and you used the term just a minute ago, and that's having a conscious awareness. I probably would have fallen out with God after Henry died and felt that he abandoned me. We didn't speak for a long time. But then as I got older, I think I became more spiritual and definitely seeking out that meaning in my life and understanding, you know, knowing that there's more than this world and there's definitely a higher being operating. And now I have to say that I tap into that on a daily basis. And
what do you do to do that? Do you mind sharing?
Well, I meditate. I also try and be present. I think that I can step away from my head a lot more and kind of listen to myself. The head can be very chattery. And, you know, recently I just would have kind of been in my head too much where I needed to step away from that and say, you know, that's trauma or something else talking, that's not you. So really trying to practice on understanding the real me as opposed to the mind that is an overdrive. And you see, I'm the type of person that is a fixer and always, and I think it's just, again, probably my background, I've been thrown into traumas quite a lot. And then naturally, I've been able to take myself out, but then I've made it my default position.
Yes.
Which again, I've been learning that when I let go, then things can happen. And actually, I had a huge, I don't call it an awakening. And my thirst for education is brilliant, but in part it was misguided. So I followed academic education and I sought the answers there. And it wasn't until I went to the Pendulum Summit back in maybe 2016 when I heard Robin Sharma and Jack Canfield and John D. Martini, to name but a few, that I went, oh my goodness me, how has nobody ever told me or introduced me to this world? And since then, I've been absolutely hooked. And yeah, and now learning from other great teachers there, and that's really where my practice lies, and learning more about it. I'm a student now, and I love being a student of this.
Well, that's fantastic. So am I, an eternal student. In my own case, I've always had access to it because of how I was raised, although it was quite a strong religious side of things. But because of my indifference to that, I was very, very much tuned into the other side, what I call the spiritual realm. And so I've been on the journey too, just to learn more and more. And I was at the first Pendulum Summit because Deepak Chopra was there, in fact. I never got to the second one. I'm trying to recall, I think we were in Australia living at that stage. The first one was in 2015. And because I trained with Deepak, he was there in the first one. So of course I went along. But I mean, you know, what's really interesting, because obviously the Pendulum Summit, for example, is very much geared towards corporate and business. And they're really introducing this to everyday life for people that are running business, corporations, institutions. I mean, it's just this awareness that it doesn't have to be all about the hard work. We don't have to, we're not on our own ultimately, that we are really co-creating. And it's a really liberating experience for people when they understand this and get this at the core level. So it sounds like you have it sussed. I wanted just to ask you, who for you would be, you know, among the most influential people in your life? I mean, obviously from childhood right through to now, who would you say that would be for you?
I think my children are. They have shaped who I am, both Sophie and Bobby. And I'm very much influenced by them, but also how they look up to me and how I be in myself in front of them. And I think as a parent, you're also always learning.
Yes.
And as they go through different chapters in your life, you're in a different chapter. And so, you know, I think that for me, they're really important. You can see that the word influence to me is I don't know, it's just that I'm just kind of very simple in my thinking, to be honest.
That's beautiful. Well, first of all, I don't think you're simple at all in your thinking. I think you're very out there and very forward thinking, but to do what you have done and to be able to manage things the way you have, Joanne. But I hear you loud and clear. I mean, you were a young mother, and I am sure that you're an incredible role model to your children. I'm sure they really admire you and look up to you. And I think it's wonderful. I actually feel quite emotional because you've really and truly done amazing things. I mean, I mean, as a woman to woman, I think, you know, I really admire you. I just want to say that to you.
Thank you.
But what I'd love to ask you is, if you had an opportunity having dinner with somebody that you would love to really, you know, get into their head for some advice or guidance, who would that be?
I love Oprah.
Me too.
I mean, she has interviewed all of the best teachers in the world. She asks great questions, and, you know, she's also on the journey, but I just can't get enough of her, and I'd love to meet her in real life. So yeah, I'd love a one-to-one with Oprah.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, I think there's a couple of others that have said the same thing. There's a bit of a queue. We're all in the queue together. She might take on a few of us Irish women. Would be fantastic. I mean, for me, she ticks all the boxes as well. I mean, from her background to who she's become, and she certainly comes across still as a very humble, modest person. I mean, I just think she's amazing as well. I'm a huge fan, have to say. What's your favorite quote, Joanne, and why?
It's one I live by, and it's feel the fear and do it anyway, because on the other side of fear is opportunity and growth. And actually, if you feel fear, it's probably something that you want to do, something that you care about, right? If you're scared about it, you really care about it. If you're not scared, you're indifferent. It doesn't really matter to you. So I've always tried to just feel the fear and do it anyway, and usually turns out good.
No, I'm so glad you said that, because I mean, you know, I say this all the time to people that I'm working with. I say, look, at the other side of fear, when you get there, you realize that there was really very little to be afraid of. And you're quite right. The more scary it is, usually it's because we're getting closer and closer to doing something that we're meant to do. It's part of our soul's path. Also, it means that we're growing. So absolutely, it's a great quote. And are you reading a book at the moment?
So I'm reading James Clear, Atomic Habits, and it's brilliant because it breaks kind of success down. And he says, we can all have goals, but actually where we usually fail by achieving our goals is in the process, in the steps. And so he talks about repetition and habit and breaking it down and cues and triggers. And it makes so much sense. So I'm now trying to apply that to lots of things in my life, because I can be also a very impatient person. And so consistency and small progress, as we all know, when you look back, you go, yeah, that's how I made it, because I was committed and I kept going. And so even like in my business, and you'll understand too, especially in the online world, you have to chip away so much, but cumulatively you do make a lot of progress, but you can't stop. You have to keep going. You can't let a bad day tell you that it's not going to work.
No, absolutely. I have the book too, although like everything else, I generally have a bad habit, and that is I can often have several books on the go, because I also am a sponge for the information, and it can even get overwhelming at times. But James Clear is among I get so far. I mean, there's many book I read several times from cover to cover, but I love getting the recommendations of the books, and then what happens is they start to pile up on the bedside locker.
Yeah, but these books are great. You can dip into them, and you can dip out and still take something from them.
No, absolutely. And I mean, even just to open it randomly sometimes, or what do I need to hear today? I love that. So, I mean, I'm interested to hear what you have to say here, because I think you probably answered it somewhat. But what advice would you give to your younger self, Joanne?
Oh, that one is easy. And I still say it to myself now, and it's like, everything will work out and everything's going to be fine.
Love it. Great.
Because, how much tears have we cried? How many sleepless nights have we had with worry and stress, when if you just give yourself a hug or a break and said, it's actually going to be fine, and somebody else will look after it for you. And so for me, that's really important now to remember, because I think somebody always had your back. Yeah. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to fix it. So yeah.
No, it's a great motto to live by, I have to say. So look, just to wrap this up, what excites you, Joanne, about the future?
Oh, I am so excited about the future. I think my 40s, apart from getting the vaccine soon, I'm 43, so I'm nearly next in line. I think my 40s are going to be a really good decade for me. I'm really excited. I feel that from a career perspective, I've spent the last 20 years working, and I've established myself, and that'll be easier. The kids are in a really good place. I feel free and just ready and open for whatever life brings to me. And I think I'm in a good place spiritually, mentally, and physically too. So I'm just open for what life will bring, and not trying to direct or control the future.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. And I have no doubt that you'll have more and more success. Joanne, it's an absolute pleasure. It's been a real privilege speaking to you. You're so incredibly inspirational, and, keep doing what you're doing. I've no doubt that it will evolve. And I look forward to continuing to watch you and celebrate you on social media and beyond. And hopefully we'll meet in person again very soon. So I just want to pause that now, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And you're all very welcome to reach out and comment. And also, if you are listening to this and you are also on a mission and would like to be on the show, I'd love to have you and celebrate you too. So just get in touch. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this show so that you will be notified when the next episode is released. And remember, keep believing. You're amazing and you have so much to give. Now is your time.